Nei. Ja. Okay, da begynner vi. So it's time to get started. Welcome everyone. It's nice to see you as always. So today I'm here with Linn Sæbø, who's an associate professor of practical theology, and with Hilde Øgreid Movafagh, who is an associate professor of systematic theology, right? Yes. And they will let us into their reflections on autoethnography today, which is something that they're working on. And they have entitled their talk, Challenging Autoethnography and Ourselves, Researching Our Own Experiences as Female Pastors in Norwegian Free Churches. And I think you all know more or less how we do this. There's 13 minutes for a presentation, and there is 13 minutes for discussion. And if you are with us here, you can use the microphone over here to ask questions. And if you're with us digitally, you can put your questions in the chat function, and Greg will read your questions there. Please.
Thank you. Today, we will shortly present our project on female clergy in the Norwegian Free Churches, and then jump into our exploration of methods in connection with the project. We should really do a project on this. We always told each other in the breaks we had when we worked on our PhD thesis. And this in question sprung out of us bonding over our shared experiences, having been lead pastors in a free church in Norway. And three different things, at least, fueled the project. Irritation over the continuous attention of Øgreid as the first female pastor in Norway, when she really was the first female pastor in the Church of Norway. Second, our experiences with being free church in a society where the Church of Norway still is considered the norm of Christianity. And three, all the struggles we, and we knew many others, had as female pastors in the free churches. So our material is now 41 interviews with female pastors in Norwegian Free Churches, and grouped then in 4 samples, working as pastors now, and those who have quitted for other reasons than retirement, the pioneers that cannot be anonymous, and then young, newly educated pastors in their first job. And we have interviewed in 8 different denominations.
And we think that we have identified something very interesting. Female free church pastors in Norway are doubly marginalized. They are marginalized as female pastors in their domination in churches, and as free church in the larger society. And there has also been very little research done on these women and these denominations, as most research on religion in Norway is done on the Church of Norway or other faiths like Islam or Hinduism and etc. On the one hand, this is not so strange. In Norway, 65% of the population are members of the Church of Norway. Other Christian churches are the next largest group at 7%. And there are many different denominations and churches in here, including Catholic and Orthodox churches that are growing. So in a larger societal view, the free churches are fringe groups. Therefore, it's understandable that they have not been prioritized in research. At the same time, the Norwegian religious landscape is changing, and membership in the Church of Norway is declining. In addition, Norway is a society preoccupied with working towards gender equality. And there have been many pushes from the government to increase the numbers of women participating in leadership, also in the free churches. However, no other empirical research looks into what it is like to be women in such positions. And this is what we wanted to change. And in the empirical part of this project, we aim for thick descriptions of these women's daily lives.
The following problem we encountered was negotiating our experiences in such a project. Because we were both pioneers in our respective churches, though in different manners. I am a member of the Methodist Church, and the Methodists have had female clergy for a long time, but I am the first female rector of the seminary. But Linn, she is I jumped a bit here. Linn is now a member of the Church of Norway, but grew up in and worked as lead pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Free Church of Norway. And when she was ordained in 2011, she was the second woman ordained as a lead pastor. And she was ordained during what the Free Church called a trial period to test if female clergy was a good idea. That is some kind of exam. So that's Linn's story as a pioneer. And in order to address our own experiences in relation to the project, we turned to autoethnography. But as this presentation will show, we also felt that autoethnography did not wholly fit our research, and thus we wanted to develop the method to better fit our project.
So what is autoethnography? It is a method to include your own experiences in research. And it really is what the word says. It's writing about yourself. It also often has a creative element. You can use diaries, you can use drawings, you can use photographs, poems. And as a result, this method has been critiqued for not being scientific enough and for producing both bad research and bad literature or bad poems. And in reading up on autoethnography, we found ourselves very intrigued by this bottom-up perspective that is inherent in the method. It is a method for giving voice to new and previously silent voices in research, exactly like we wish to do. However, we also found ourselves agreeing with many of the scholarly critiques of the method. And we believe that the most severe critique is that it's very difficult to engage in academic, critical reflection over personal stories. Thus, we wanted to incorporate our own experience, but do it in a with more traditional empirical methods. And we do lean somewhat upon Mats Alvesson's argument for and methodology for close-up studies. He states that, quote, personal involvement should not necessarily rule out an inquiry. It may be a resource as much as a liability, unquote. He does not call his method autoethnography, but self-ethnography. And he defines self-ethnography as a study and a text in which the researcher author describes a cultural setting to which she has natural access, is an active participant, more or less on equal terms with other participants. Alvesson is also very hesitant towards only conducting interviews in such studies. And our empirical material is mainly based on interviews. Yet, all of our experiences as pastors might count as some form of retrospective self-ethnography. We now reflect on our experiences with an ethnographic view. Ethnography and most of all anthropology have long raised the risk of going native. But Alvesson makes this being native more of a positive resource. And this is what we have tried to do in this project. We have also experienced, especially in the interviews, that when we say, well, I worked as a pastor in this church, this opens up the interview. However, there's always a balance of not becoming co-workers, sharing experiences and maintaining some sort of distance. But that's something we negotiate all through this project.
So what have we done? We have basically used normal, qualitative, empirical methods, but included our own interviews, which started out as pilot interviews. So leaning on both autoethnography and self-ethnography in order to validate research on ourselves and our own environment, not the least, we have used the analysis of our interviews and our lived experiences in at least two different ways. First, as inspiration for the interview guide. The interview guide was formed firstly by us, then circulated in the whole research group with 9 people. All the other researchers in the research group are in the same position as us. They have at some point been a pastor in a free church, but now work primarily with research. Thus, in the interview guide is to a large degree grounded in experiences from our own time working as pastors and from research interests and earlier research conducted by others in the research group. The second, to form hypotheses for the analysis of the other interviews. And here we have 3 examples. The first, after analyzing our interviews, we noticed, for instance, that in my interview, there are a lot of stories on microaggression, but not so much in Linn's. Linn had to fight for the women's rights. I never had to do that. The resistance in Linn's story was open and outspoken. The Methodists, the women have had full clergy rights since 1956, and the first ordination in Norway was in 1932. The church takes a lot of pride in being a church of equality, but then microaggressions happen. And this is something we have watched for in our initial analysis of the other interviews. Is this a pattern? And so far it does seem like it, but it's still a little early to say for sure. There are far more microaggressions in churches who have been open for women in ministry for a while. The places where there is still an open conflict, the microaggressions are fewer. The second example, another question we have continued to explore is the analysis, is the single female pastor as sexually dangerous? We both experienced several sexually loaded comments when we were single pastors, and a shift as soon as we were in a committed relationship and subsequently married. And here there also seemed to be a pattern. However, we had not initially tied this to age. Now we do. Further analysis of the more interviews brought up the question of age here as well, because young single female pastors receive substantially more sexual comments and sometimes harassment and physical touch than older single female pastors. That's some news, huh? All right. So the third example, I really haven't experienced much. This was a sentence that I use quite a lot and repeated several times in my interview. And however, when Linn analyzed it, she marked a lot of experiences that she interpreted as negative experiences. And this made us aware of phrases such as that. I haven't experienced much. I don't have too many stories to tell. It does seem like many of our interviewees make such claims in the interviews, and there are at least 2 dynamics at play here. First, the women often downplay negative experiences and have learned to live with it. And second, women who explicitly say that they are feminist and state that they are occupied with promoting equal rights, they have fewer of these statements and seem to have a language to interpret and verbalize what they experience.
So that was just a taste, but that's how we have worked. So we have tried to use our own experiences and analyze our own interview and done like normal qualitative interviews and analyze them, coding them. And we believe that it has enriched the project, and it had also steered and challenged some of our own experiences so that we find new ways of interpreting things. And we have also had access to material because we come from the position that we do, that we normally wouldn't. Many of the free churches and low churches are not very used to being researched and are a bit skeptical to it. So that we have this sort of authority and the experience that has allowed us to come into these areas. So we have played a bit with what to call our approach. It's not autoethnography, it's not self-ethnography, and it's not normal ethnography. So maybe it's each other ethnography, or it works better in Norwegian, hverandre ethnography. So that's something we are playing with. We also finally see some challenges. How do we steer our own and the research group's experiences into valid research questions and not stay in the anecdotal? That's the challenge. When does a research group transition into being a therapy session with these 9 female pastors going over their experiences? And when does it actually bring forth very good research questions? We also wonder if there are elements of autoethnography and the creative element of it that we have too easily dismissed. Maybe we should think more about that. And we also think that Alvesund just has a point in claiming that interviews alone might not be enough, and that we maybe should have done some observations as well, but that's too late. But those are the challenges we see. We're looking forward to your questions, and thank you for your attention.